This is Think Like an Acrobat, a Circus Talk Pro series where we discuss elements of the circus industry in unique ways not typically done before. It's our effort to maximize our expertise for you so that you can travel a far less complicated circus road. I'm your host, Shenea Stiletto. On today's episode of Think Like an Acrobat, I'm going to interview co-founder of iRig Event, Ryan Tacunha, and he's going to teach us how to secure ourselves through the art of rigging on a global scale. Hi, Ryan. Thank you so much for coming on to Think Like an Acrobat, joining us all the way from Saudi Arabia. I know you are incredibly busy right now, and I appreciate you taking the time. How are you today?
All good. Yeah, very busy, as you said, but that's a good thing, given how it's been of recent years. But yeah, all good.
Ryan, you are the co-founder of the highly sought-after global rigging company iRig, which has rigged for such high-profile events such as the London Olympics, Sochi Olympics, and Hollywood movies. And today you are going to teach us how to secure ourselves by mastering the art of rigging on a global scale. So to start our conversation today, I wanted to open by asking you how the industry of rigging has evolved over the several decades that you have been a part of it.
Yeah, sure. So there's lots of ways we've changed. If we go right back to the bare bones of it, the safety standards have been raised. And that was a change that had to happen. And that's an evolution that you know, it had to happen. There were accidents, people did have problems, there were injuries and worse. So safety standards have been raised. As much as it annoys people sometimes, you know, better to be safe than sorry always. Other ways we've changed, we've gone from manual systems to programmable automated electronic systems. Manual is still very much used. Certainly in the circus world, they prefer manual. Film and TV seem to prefer programmable because of the preset and reset times. They like to go millimeter precision, which is the only issue with manual. Is not that it's not safe, it's just that you do have that one little possibility for human error, whereas a machine will only ever do as it's told. So that's really the main ways I see that we've evolved. Yeah, training is now available as well. It probably wasn't before. It was all on the job training before. If you were lucky enough to get offered a shift or whatever, you'd go in and you'd learn a bit from whoever was good enough to teach you. Sometimes they weren't good enough to teach you because they didn't want to hand over their intellectual property or whatever they want to call it. But nowadays we have apprenticeships, we have training schemes, we have certified courses, and it's all open to pretty much anyone that wants to do it. And of course, when I started, there was no internet. So now you can also do this. You can Google stuff, you can look it up, you can find places to train, you can get, you know, public information, no problem. So we've evolved in those ways. It's not a huge, massive, we've not reinvented the wheel. You know, hanging stuff safely, hanging people safely, building temporary structures safely is nothing that people haven't been doing for many, many, many years. We've just changed the standard of equipment. We've brought in things like safety factors. Everything now is calculated. There's a, you know, it's all traceable. CAD, Vectorworks, all these systems, programs that we use to do drawings and load calculations and submit to third-party engineers and all the rest of it. That all falls under raising the safety standard. But those are the things really, the way I see it. Not massive changes, really. You know, for flying people, for example, a winch is a winch. It's just a bit of machinery that spins round and round. It's the software that's the clever stuff that makes it do what it has to do. A chain hoist for hanging a lighting truss or whatever. It's just a machine that goes up and down. It's nothing, you know, it's nothing massively technologically advanced. But I would say automation wise, sure, that stuff's the clever stuff. That's really changed things. Certainly in rigging, the programs, the software, the engineers that are doing and writing the code for all this stuff, that's the super clever stuff. That's been a game changer. But other than that, it's pretty much as it was.
Because rigging is so involved and intimate, whether it be for a person or structure, can you please show us or tell us about properly executed rigging and also rigging that has been improperly done and explain why?
Yeah, sure. So it all comes back to me, for me, to the planning, design, right from taking a client's concept to discussing options of how to achieve it, right through to the execution. That's how it begins. There's a process, there's a conveyor belt system in my mind that we do. We plan, we listen to what you want, we look at how we can do it. We've got to see if the venue is suitable first, and then we look at the execution of it. That includes all those things I just mentioned about drawings, load calculations, third-party engineer sign off, you know, always backing yourself up that someone else is involved to sort of check that you're okay. So if those things aren't in place, then it's bad rigging. Yeah, it shouldn't happen. It's all very well for a guy, me or someone else who's been doing it 20 odd years to go, yeah, that's fine. But you need to relay that information to people who don't know and need to be told in layman's terms why it's okay. So I don't have any images for you. I've got lots of them, sadly, but I'll give you an example. I was told this when I was an apprentice. Rigging generally is symmetrical. Not always, but generally. For balancing a load, for example, if you want a performer who's on a coat hanger picked up at the hips, that would be symmetrical. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a balanced load. So if you see that it's not symmetrical, generally with rigging, if it doesn't look right, it's not. And even the untrained eye can see when a shackle's twisted or a rope's in the wrong place, or that doesn't look like a good knot, anything like that. Now, what I have seen outside of Europe normally is not that these people are trying to be dangerous, and not that they're ignoring safety, and not that they are malicious or whatever. They just don't know. So they're doing the best that they think, but that's an uneducated point of view. So we don't shout and scream at these people. I'm in Saudi Arabia right now, and I'm looking at some shocking stuff every day. But do I shout and scream? No, there's no point, because they don't know why they're wrong. So we try and educate, try and teach them a better way. And eventually they do get it, they understand. But what they don't have the fortune of that we do is that when I was in London and I wanted to be a rigger as a young guy, I knew where I had to look to get that training, and it was available. These people don't have that option. In many of the countries I've been to, they don't have the option of being trained properly, because the people who are already experienced in those countries also aren't trained. So bad rigging, to simplify it for you, looks bad. It's that simple. Something will look wrong. And in that case, you double check it, you get somebody else to look at it. And you always back yourself up with a second opinion, minimum a second opinion.
What should riggers working on a global scale keep at the forefront of every job they execute? And how is rigging locally different than rigging internationally?
So number one, always without fail should be, regardless of where on this planet you are, if you get a gig rigging on the moon, You shouldn't drop your standards. You shouldn't change doing what you know is correct in the correct execution of whatever you're doing. That should not change because, oh, I'm in Canada. Oh, I'm in America. Oh, I'm in the UK. Oh, over here, we allow this. I don't know how they do it in America or Canada. That's different to me. But I know if I saw them doing something that I didn't agree with, we'd have a conversation and they might educate me. I'm always open to that. You know, no, every day is a school day. We don't know everything. Every job is different. Every client, every expectation, everything's different. So you just don't drop who you are and the integrity of what you do based on being in a different country. I find it a bizarre concept when I hear people say, oh, it's only Dubai. Okay, but that's only a human that we're about to fly. Why do they not deserve the same quality and respect? Morally, I always say to my guys, like I said to them this morning in our morning briefing, they were about to hang a structure that's going to have the public underneath it. And they were saying, are you happy with that? And the question I make them ask themselves is, would you put your family under it? Okay, if you can't say yes to that, then you should not morally put anyone else's family under it. So that's exactly what I say in my mind to myself every time we lift a structure or a person or whatever. Would I put my kids under it?
Ryan, what is the rigging business like as a lifestyle? It's such a crucial industry, but it's actually a pretty underground aspect to eventing that you don't think of in terms of agencies or casting. So how do you get the rigging job and how do you build a career in rigging?
Okay, so that is something I can only really answer based on the UK, because that's how I entered the business. Number one, I did an apprenticeship for 4.5 years. At the end of that apprenticeship, I was in a position, I thought, that I could become part of the freelance fraternity. I thought I had enough experience, I'd made enough contacts, and I was in a position to choose where I worked as opposed to be told where I worked because of being an employee before. So I went that route, and that is the only route to take from the UK's perspective. You have to have the training to push yourself through, but it is a small clique. The rigging world is not, you know, it's not massive. We could be chit-chatting in an airport and turn around and there'll be someone going somewhere and you'll know them because there's probably not that many of us. So because there's not many of us, certainly not many of us that operate at the optimum level in terms of quality and standards, what we do is we know each other because there's not many of us. You know, it's simple as that. It's a small business. So the weak get weeded out very quickly. The unsafe or the substandard get weeded out very quickly, you know, and we all know who everyone is, you know. None of us are always going to get on. It's not possible. We're riggers. We're arrogant by birth, by nature. That's what we are. We just are. I don't know why, but we are. And if anyone doesn't admit that, they're a liar. But it's reputation. That's how you come into it. You know, that's the only route. You do your training, you build your reputation. There is no agencies, there's no castings, it's all word of mouth, you know? So for example, there's some venues in the UK who have got their house team. And you'll only get a shout in that roof to go and work at that venue if one of them's not available. But that's there. It's not unionized like as such. There is a union, but it's not quite as militant as your part of the world.
What are the costs of rigging on a global market, and how does that budget factor into the dynamics of getting the job done?
Okay, so that's really tough to answer because every single job has a different request, requirement, or need. So the costs are, if you need 5 chain hoists for a couple of trusses, that's a small cost or whatever. And we have a standard rate for that we charge. So each item is itemized when we quote, and then we just multiply that for the quantity you require. If you then get involved in something like, I've recently been looking at a 3D flying system with the winch system, with our Performer flying winches with the Simple Motion Australia, our automation partner. When you get into those realms, you're now dealing with something very specific that not many people can do. So for that, it's a case-by-case thing. So to answer your question, every single job is dependent price-wise on what they need and in what quantity. I mean, this thing in Saudi that I'm doing now, for example, we've got 700 motors and 3 kilometers of truss. So, yeah, so that's a big one. But then I had to factor into that, paying the guys, bringing the machines that we need, the cherry pickers, all the plant machinery, shipping costs from Dubai, flights, accommodation, PDs, blah, 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 blah. The list goes on. So for this job, the quote was that big in terms of itemized line items. And I'm looking at another little thing when I get back to Dubai next week it's nothing. So it's all dependent on what people want. However, whether it's a monster show or whether it's a tiny little corporate, what we maintain is the standard that we work to.
When you are organizing an event with multiple riggers involved, how is this structured and what is important when communicating with a team versus doing the rigging job by yourself?
Okay, so when I'm crewing a job, I look at that job's requirement and if there are any specifics. So if I'm doing a job that requires rope access, as opposed to being on the catwalk in an arena roof or whatever, I make sure that I have rope access qualified crew for that. So it's all about, imagine a spreadsheet and I just tick who's got that skill, who's got that skill, who's got that skill, until I hit the people that I need. If it's general rigging, truss, motors, you know, and nothing too technically advanced, then any of my guys are good for that. But each of them also carries an individual specialism that I can put specifically where I need it if it's required. If we're doing performer flying, then obviously we install with that a rescue team. That rescue team, because of mechanical or electrical power failure or whatever, is there to get the performer out of the roof before they've been suspended too long in the harness. Because that's suspension trauma and it's potentially fatal. So we have a team on standby to do that. Now that team will be a rope access rescue team. But I wouldn't employ that team to come and do this show in Saudi. So it's all about specific and really fine tuning what that event or show needs to make sure they get the quality and the best fit for purpose crew.
Can rigging be done virtually through instruction? Have you done this? And is there any aspect of virtual rigging that you think can ever be fully trusted, or is it essentially impossible and dangerous?
If I was talking to you today about something that you wanted to do and you had someone else holding a camera and you were going, so I'm going to do this, and I'd say, stop what you're doing now, stop it. Okay. However, if I was talking to a friend of mine of 20 years that I know is really good at what he does and he just wants some consultation or advice, or for me just to confirm any fears or doubts, then sure, I'd talk to him. And I do the same. I call people that I was trained by or that I worked with as an apprentice that were very experienced. I still call them sometimes and go, what do you reckon if I do this? And that's an if you know kind of thing. You know, you've got to be within our world. It's like me saying to you, teach me to do a handstand over Zoom. Trust me, it's ugly. You don't want to see that. But Yeah, I wouldn't encourage virtual training unless it was only theoretical.
And for our last question, Ryan, and thank you again, how do you keep track of what's going on in the world of rigging? How do you know what has shifted or changed in terms of things to adhere to, like from country to country?
So like I said before, it's not that I don't care what other countries are doing, but I know if I follow my standards, then wherever I take those standards in the world, we'll be okay. So right down to certified equipment that's been tested recently, it's within date of its certificate, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. I only know the right way to do it because of how I was taught. So there is no other way. You got to do it. That's the route, and that's the only option you've got.
Is there anything that you want to leave us with your last final words, Ryan, of what you think is so important and crucial to know for rigging on a global scale?
Yeah, look, highlight things. If you aren't happy, no one's going to mock you because you've highlighted something, even if you're wrong. If you're wrong you think something's dangerous, but you're wrong, at least you've brought it up. Better to bring it up and be wrong than, to have something catastrophic happen because you were too shy to open up about it. If you're a performer and you're new, start learning what's safe. No one's going to ask you to be a rigger, but certainly understand what you're attached to and why you're attached to it. Speak to your rigger, ask questions. And if that rigger is too arrogant to answer your questions, then get another one. Yeah, get another rigger or get his boss and find out why, because there is no reason with the advances in technology and the safety standards and the materials we're using nowadays to build and manufacture, there's no reason to have accidents. So open up, speak up, don't be shy. Talk to your rigger.
Thank you, Ryan, for helping us to think like an acrobat. Because to think like an acrobat is to advance our connection within the interdependent nature of a movement-based environment that relies heavily on the mechanics of assembled accuracy. This is the AAA segment, or Ask an Acrobat portion of the show, where I answer questions that didn't make it into the final cut of the interview, or where I share my own reflections on the episode topic. So I learned so much from this episode with Ryan of IRIG. He is so knowledgeable and so amazing. And I had the opportunity to work with him on a huge event previously in Saudi Arabia. So it's interesting that he is back there again for this interview. I wanted to point out that, rigging, it wasn't so crazily accessible and fundamental to the circus industry about 20 years ago as it is now. And I've been around for the evolution of what rigging is, even though for myself, I'm not a rigger and I actually don't do a lot of aerial work, even though I have done it over the years. I'm more or less a bystander to rigging that happens around me. And sometimes you learn more by being the person on the outside than you do sometimes being the person on the inside of things, because you have to take a lot in and you're able to, see the full picture. And you're the one that's kind of just listening and taking it all in. But now, because it's more and more of just a norm, every space you go into, you're expected to have rigging there. And that wasn't something that you would have seen years ago when I, was starting and in getting into this business. It was much more ground acts and such. And you just didn't expect for every single event you went into to have some element of rigging to it. And what I find now is that that causes all sorts of problems and all sorts of issues, even though it's obviously something very cool and innovative within the business. And like Ryan said, there's so much that's accessible now that you shouldn't be having so many problems because the technology is there, the information is there, the expertise is there. However, what he also brought up, which is what I've seen in rigging on a global scale all over the world, in so many different diverse places, is that there can sometimes be a lack of attention, or there can be a lack of understanding, because even though it's so prominent everywhere, that level of expertise, again, because the rigging world is so niche, there's not like millions of Ryans out there. Like, he is incredibly still super specific. So, the circus world is super specific, and then people even on Ryan's level are, on even more specific, if that makes sense. And so, and keeping that in mind, I advise everyone that is within the aerial arts, and who is also a rigger, to just consistently do your homework, and know that you're up against a lot when you're going in and out of your country of origin, or maybe even your country of origin doesn't have access to a lot of adequate rigging or rigging experts such as Ryan, which can totally be the case. And again, I'm, sometimes in spaces where even if people are super, super knowledgeable, the events space just is not adequate, but the client really, really, really wants what they want. And people are willing, artists are willing, different, aspects of the industry are just willing to try to figure it out. And that's a good thing and a very dangerous thing. And remember, you are a person. These are people. This is a body. And many things, to me, from what I've seen over the years, should be absolutely non-negotiable when it comes to rigging. And what you need to put up with. I've spoken about, in the past, even working for incredibly reputable companies, huge mistakes have been made. When I was having rigging facilitated for me, and then the countless experiences and stories that I know, that have been cataclysmic for circus artists around the world, and really in America and around the world. And so those mistakes and things do happen, and they are extremely unfortunate. Some of them are preventable. Some of them come down to human error, again, because you literally have people's lives in your hands when you are doing this job, and you need to be masterful. And for artists out there, knowing even what listening to what Ryan said, even if you know what you have to speak up for yourself. And I have seen that countless times with artists and performers and people in production, unwilling or intimidated to not say what they know. And sometimes, even if you're equipped with the proper knowledge, are you surrounded by those that are willing to listen to you? And are you willing to walk away from the job? Because I've been in spaces where rigging has just been condemned, and people will refuse to touch it, out of their ethics and their moral center, which Ryan was speaking about, because they know that it's unsafe, and no amount of money is going to make them hang somebody from that structure, or put a human being within whatever is being created to absorb them or hold them inadequately. So ask an acrobat so that you can think like an acrobat. Here are the top 5 takeaways from Let's Secure Ourselves, the art of rigging on a global scale with Ryan Tacunia. Number 1, maintaining your rigging standards regardless of where you are in the world is key. Number 2, talk to your rigger, have a rapport with them, build trust with your rigger, especially if you're on a long job together. Number 3, exercise extreme caution when navigating rigging virtually on any level. This should most likely not be an option in any case. Number 4, your reputation as a rigger precedes you, as it is a very small culture and sector of the industry. And number 5, Speak up for yourself if you feel unsafe with how you are being rigged. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Think Like an Acrobat, where we learned how to secure ourselves with co-founder of iRig Event, Ryan Zacunha. Please make sure to send in your video or audio questions about future episodes to news@circustalk.com. Stay tuned for the next episode of Think Like an Acrobat with your host, Shenea Stiletto.